Hi, I'm Scott Lloyd with Racing for ALS. We like to go fast and raise money for a good cause.
Hey Track Shakers, today I'm here at Virginia International Raceway to speak with Scott Lloyd of Racing for ALS. They're doing awesome things in the world of track days and hpde, but even more importantly, they're raising money for a truly great cause to help with ALS research. Let's hear their story.
Here to talk to you about Racing for ALS and what we're all about and why we're doing what we're doing to help raise money and awareness for ALS research. For myself, I actually work and have worked for the last 25 years as a consultant in the behavioral health industry. In October of 2017, my brother was diagnosed with ALS, which is also a lot of times better known as Lou Gehrig's disease. And at that point, we realized that our dream of going to the track someday, buying cars when we were retired, needed to be today. So we went and did what we had to do to get some cars and get to the track, and really got to enjoy a good solid 2 years of racing together before ALS sadly has taken my brother off track. But we continue as the Racing for ALS family. There's several people that are involved and really working hard to raise money and awareness for ALS research. So far we've raised just over $125,000 since June of 2018. So that's just over 2 years, and we want to keep going. My brother and I have always liked cars. We had a grandfather who was a master mechanic in the Navy, then went on to work with Gregory Poole for about 25, 30 years, and he just always taught us automotive and cars and the importance of upkeep and everything that was really needed for that. So we've always been into cars, and Camaros have been something we always liked. And my first car, actually my dad and I bought as a project car when I was 13, was a 1974 Camaro. So it's something that goes way back for us, and that's one of the reasons we also like these new Gen 5 and Gen 6 Camaros, because they have a lot of the styling cues that harken back to those 60s and 70s muscle cars. My brother and I have always enjoyed driving fast whenever we got the opportunity. We've always, I started off doing drag racing, was the first thing that I did. But for actual road racing and getting into what we're doing here, it really wasn't until after my brother's diagnosis in 2017. We went and purchased our first set of Camaros, 2015 Z28s, and our first time was actually here at VIR. It was for the Victory Junction charity laps. So we came out in April of 18, and from there we were hooked and probably did 15 full-fledged hpde's that summer, and went on and did I think twice as many the next year because we really needed to get as much time on track as we could. My brother, just a normal guy, family guy. He had a business. He was doing high-end home theater install, and one day his thumb started bothering him. He couldn't grip things real well, and he thought it was because he was using his phone too much, and they told him he had a tendon that was bad. And fast forward 6 to 8 months later, and exhaustive tests later, and all of a sudden they come back and say, hey, it's ALS. It's incurable. Life expectancy is 2.5 years. It's better known as Lou Gehrig's disease, and it's honestly, it's brutal. There's no other way to say it, kindly, it's brutal. And so for my brother and I, that's when we realized that, our dream of getting race cars someday needed to happen today. So we went and did a lot of things that would make fiscal conservatives very nervous, and I'm fiscal conservative, so it made me nervous, but just trusting in the Lord and going out and doing what we had to do financially to get the cars and get on track, because we knew that time was against us. It's interesting, ALS, I call it a pinball disease. I'm sure doctors wouldn't like that, but I call it that because nobody knows where it's going. It's like a pinball just bouncing around in someone's body. Everyone manifests the symptoms differently. He was diagnosed in October of 17, and again, we started in April of 18. The impacts were mainly in his hands and his arms, and that's where it started. So it was interesting. I think just through sheer willpower, he was able to drive a lot longer than honestly I thought or expected he would be able to, because there were certain things that he had lost. And that's the thing with ALS is, again, you just don't know how it's going to impact you. It impacts everybody differently. And so he was able to still control the car, but he had lost a lot of control in his hands. So he continued to do hpde's relatively normally through most of 18. Into 19, that's where it started to get a lot more challenging. And actually what had happened is that it had stopped progressing in his hands and his arms and had gone to his chest. The doctors in the beginning of 19 told us that he would be gone by October of 2019. And so, we wanted to race as much as we could and do as much as we could. He still felt safe. He was out there, he's running 208s, here at VIR in a Camaro, a really good time. But by August of 2019, actually what happened for him is going into turn 1 and also through Oak Tree, the G-forces were so strong he couldn't breathe. And so we started to run into the possibility that he could pass out. And that was sadly right here at VIR, the end of his racing was in August of 2019. If there's nothing else that gets included in this video, it would be that, we're thankful for the doctors, but we're trusting in the Lord. The Lord knows when my brother is going to leave this earth, not anybody else. And, he has defied all the numbers, he has defied all the odds so far, and we continue to just have faith that he is going to be healed. But this disease is brutal, and what it's done to him has been very challenging, obviously, for him, and very challenging for for the family members. And we just continue to support him and pray for him. And that's like why yesterday, we went to North Wilkesboro, Speedway, and we went to Hendrick, and we're just trying to do as much as we can and enjoy time together any chance we get. So we purchased our first car in February of 2018 from Hendrick in Cary, and I want to mention them because they've been amazing to us and helped us out with trucks and cars, and just you can't imagine sponsoring our events. just amazing people. They're friends more than anything else. We purchased a 2015 Z28, but realized really quickly we didn't want to share it. We were like, who's going to drive? So we got my brother a car, but his was stock. Mine had a motor upgrade on it by Hennessey. So it was about close to 700 horsepower. His was at 500. So for his birthday, we sent his car out to Hennessey to have it done. So my brother and I flew into Houston, Texas, and we went out to the shops at Hennessey, and super nice people there. They took us around, made sure we liked everything, did a really cool video, still out on their YouTube and our YouTube. When we went to pick it up, we said, let's blog about it. Let's post online. Let's, ask people to donate. And my brother's like, man, nobody will ever do that. And I'm like, maybe they don't, but who cares? Let's try. That was our first $1,000 raised for ALS TDI, was that trip back, because we drove it Cannonball Run style. We stopped for just a little bit to sleep, all the way back in. But we basically, I think, left on a Friday and got home, on that Saturday, the next Saturday afternoon, and kind of kept recording messages throughout and talking about how many people had been diagnosed while we were on our trip, because somebody's diagnosed every 90 minutes. And looking at, how many people had passed from ALS, because actually someone passes away from ALS every 90 minutes. So it was something that was an impactful journey for us, and it was also fun to do that with my brother. So it really allowed us to go in and start to see how we could make a difference with racing for ALS. So we got the trailer and we had the cars, and we started coming to hpde's, and the racing community is so amazing. It was just natural how they kept coming up to us and saying, hey, tell us about this. How can we help? What do we do? And before we knew it, we have a group of people that just support us amazingly well, help us organize events, sell shirts. Basically whatever's needed, and it's become a family. And again, we've raised over $125,000 all for ALS research in the last 2 years. So as we came into 2019, my brother's health was continuing to change. And so we were actually at our first event in 2019, and we realized that my brother could still handle the car very well. Again, was running very competitive laps, but he couldn't shift. And so we actually called our friend Cameron at Hendrick and said, hey, I know that you all just took delivery of 2 automatic Z011 LEs. I know there's a 6-month waiting list, but can we get one? And he said, how'd you know the deal fell through? And I said, what are you talking about? He said, the guy that was going to buy it just walked out. He doesn't want to buy it. He's going to buy this Corvette ZR1 instead. So we bought this car sight unseen, literally that day on the spot. And my brother was able to come back and win a 2nd place finish at the time trials a week and a half later with a brand new car. It still had the 30-day tags on it. The funny part is, we got the car, and he drove to the coast and back. He drove to the mountains, because we had to put 1,200 miles on the car to break it in so they could do the differential. But we went out there in a car he had never driven on track, and he finished 2nd place to only a race prepped Porsche with a stock Z011 LE. It was an amazing day. That was a great day. So we were looking at that and saying, okay, we got to do more. This is too much fun. So we called VIR, and to their credit, man, some amazing people here. They brought us in and they allowed us to come in and do our first ever HPDE, which was Dave's race, and it was in June of 2019. And so that was a next really big jump off point for us. And we had media coverage come, and we had my brother here with the brand new Z011LE, and all of our friends and family came out. Terry Labonte came out and was part of the event, and that helped us raise right at $35,000 that one day. And that's when we said, okay, we've got to do more of these. So that was kind of that next big jump off point. It's been amazing because it is recurring. We had our first in June of 19, our second in June of 2020. Right now, we are set up for May of 2021. However, we might be moving back to March because the SCCA time trials is here, and we may be looking to align with that. Be looking on the website for the final date. We'll be announcing that in just a few weeks, we hope. So it's set up as a standard HPDE, meaning that if you have a passenger car and a helmet, you're able to go out and run. The first 2 years of Dave's race, we really did target more advanced level drivers and instructor level drivers. And we had 5 hours of open track time with a limited field. People were running out of gas and tires and brakes by the end. I mean, it was awesome. And we plan to keep something similar to that in 2021, but this year we will likely be doing a novice group. We did that at our last race that we did this fall. As a matter of fact, it was September 7th. We did a race at CMP for our Drive for 25 program, to where we're raising $25,000 to give 25 $1,000 gifts to ALS patients. And we had a novice group and people really enjoyed that. So we will likely be doing a novice group next year, and you'd be able to come out and drive. But for our advanced group, we'll probably still be targeting at least a full 4 hours of open track, open passing, really fun time. So for the racing for ALS Camaros, we've got definitely a group of us. When we started off, my car is called Godspeed, and again, that's because that car was a gift from God. I could tell you that story if you want. It's actually pretty cool, but literally that car was just a gift from God. So we had gone to buy our first car, and we wanted to go sit in a Z011LE, and we'd gone up to the showroom, and the one they had was in the body shop that somebody had backed into it and put a little ding in it. And so we actually walked over to Dodge, and we ended up driving a Challenger Hellcat. They're amazing cars, and we really liked it. So we're like, you know what, this is bigger. We fit in it really well, because the Z01s that were on the lot, they all had sunroofs in them. We couldn't fit in them. But when I got back, I realized the guy told me, he said, yeah, this is our Hellcat. And I looked up the name, and I'm a Christian, and I have no problem with other people driving a Hellcat. I have no problem with Challengers. Drive whatever you want. But for me, the definition of it was a witch, and that was something for me that I'm like, man, I don't know if I can do that. And my brother said, we'll just order it badgeless. We'll take the badges off. It'll be okay. I'm like, all right, we'll do that. And then we go in, and there's a demon sitting there with basically the picture of like the devil on the side. And I'm like, oh, come on. And so then I'm like, all right, but I'm not buying that car. So we'll leave it alone. And we go in, and we're going to sign the paperwork. And they turn the computer around, and the first color choice was demonic red. And in that moment, I just was like, I can't do this. And so I gave the guy $20 and said, look, this is to cover your time for taking us on the test drive. I appreciate it. I said, but I just can't do this in good conscience. And when we were out looking at the Challenger, we had heard another car crank over Chevrolet, and we're like, wow, what was that? Well, what it was is the car we ended up buying. We came out of the Dodge dealership. I said, hey, let's walk back over to Chevrolet. And my daughter was there, and my brother, and they're like, why? We were just there. I'm like, we're supposed to go back over there. I know that we are. And they thought I was a little nuts. So I just said, hey, we need to go back out of Chevrolet. I don't feel this way often, but I'm telling you, we're supposed to go back over there. So we walked into Hennessey Chevrolet, and I walked up to a salesperson I'd never met and said, hey, we want to sit in your Z011LE. It's back from the body shop. And these were his exact words. He said, no, you don't. I've got the car you're supposed to have. It's called a Hennessey Z28. It came off the truck about an hour ago. It's not even officially for sale yet. Nobody even knows it's here. I'm going to pull it around. It's the car you're supposed to have. And it was. When he backed it in, literally everybody on the lot, came over to the car. The car was 3 years old. It had 840 miles on it. It was basically brand new. It had been, kept in a garage the whole time. And they wouldn't even let me test drive it, but they gave us the price. And it was actually very close to what a normal one would cost. We found out later it's because they didn't know what Hennessey meant, so they gave us the wrong price, but they stood behind it because that's the kind of people that they are. So we purchased a 2015 Hennessey Z28 with 800 miles on it for the same price as a used regular Z28. It was a gift from God. My brother's car was always known as Shadow Z because it was black. and he just always kind of looked like it was coming out of the shadows. But since that time, obviously, and what was kind of interesting, when we bought that second car, sight unseen, from my brother, that was that Z011LE, it's actually shadow gray. So we just were able to move the shadow moniker to there. But obviously we have Scott Weatherford who drives with us. Everybody knows him, or we call him the king of CMP. Set a track record there during our event on September 7th. His car is the Beast Z01. We have Andrew Tramal, who races with us, one of our big fundraisers, just an amazing dude. He has a white Z011LE that we call Night Train. So everybody kind of has their own moniker for their car. And what's been cool as well is, we're working with Kevin and his wife Regina of Guns Fitness, and they actually purchased Dave's black Z28, and it's now known as Top Gun, and they use it with the Carolina Cruise for Kids to do a lot of fundraising and a lot of cool things for folks, especially kids with cancer. So it's been really cool how it's just all gone full circle in the group of people that we've been able to be blessed with. Well, the white Camaro was a lot of fun, but that's why I love what you all are doing at Track Shaker. The first time we went out, we had no idea what we were doing, to be honest. We got there, we didn't know how to set our air pressures. We got there, nobody had told us to change out our .3 brake fluid. Our first real track event was at Charlotte Motor Speedway, and I boiled out my brake fluid coming down the front stretch at 125, coming into Heartburn Turn, and thank God, through downshifting and whatever else, I got it stopped. But it was a crash course for us. And so I think it's important for people that are wanting to get out there to have, things like Track Shaker to help them understand what they need to do. So within our first couple of events, we had gone from, not knowing what we were doing to actually people coming and asking us advice, which was cool. We wanted to help anybody that we could. That's actually how we met a lot of the folks that we now race with. At my first event at Charlotte, I got to witness the challenging part of HPDs. I watched a brand new BMW in front of me lose it in the infield and hit the wall and just total his car out. And in that moment I went, man, if I wrecked this car, there's just way too much sentimental. So I called our friends at Hendrick Chevrolet, and by July, so a month or two later, purchased a blue 2018 Z011LE that we named Winger. And that was the car that we ended up caging and putting a race seat in and doing a lot of things with. Really, really enjoyed that car. For about a year, until sadly we had a little incident here at VIR on a wet track. What happened for me, it was humbling, to be honest. I wasn't even driving the car hard. We went back and looked at the video so many times. It was a cold day here. We had a bunch of people go off track that morning. It was a NASA event. So I knew the track was treacherous. I was 22 seconds off pace. The problem with that is I wasn't paying as much attention as I should have been because I wasn't driving hard, so I didn't expect what happened. And that's a really good lesson for me and would be for anybody else watching. If you're on track, you need to be paying attention. I don't care how fast or slow you're going. And on that particular day, as I came through Snake, my left tire hit on the rumble strips. There was water on the rumble strips because there had been dew that morning. Hadn't come off yet, and as soon as my tire hit that, my car went around and I was done. Hit the wall about 50 or 60 miles an hour, and it totaled the car because it hit on the front, then hit on the side and the back. But again, thank goodness we had gone to garage therapy. We had put on a race seat, we had put on a half cage, we had done all the things, 6-point harnesses. So I jumped out of the car, I was fine, other than the airbag hitting me on the arm. But I will tell you, it was that day, there was two things that I realized. A, you can't get out of a Camaro with your helmet on, and that bothered me. And B, I didn't like the fact of how the computer controls kicked in, because that was a big reason as to why I couldn't get the car back under control. And that's what moved me to the Hendrick Track Attack car, because it's analog. Whatever you do, the car does. There's no computer, there's no interpretation, there's not even ABS. So that's a big reason as to how and why we ended up in the Hendrick car. And I'm grateful for that because of what happened here a couple of months ago. We had met a guy named Adam Boatman. He works for Hendrick Motorsports. At a track day. Actually, he's good friends with Andrew, and that's, we kind of all met at the same time. When we had our wreck here, we were going to go back and buy another Z011LE, and we were going to, cage it, and we were going to, just basically rebuild what we had lost from our car Winger. And he sent me a message and said, hey, I'd like to talk to you about this new program, and check it out. And these are formerly raced Hendrick chassis, and they're going to be the best of the best, especially from a safety standpoint and performance standpoint. And at first, I'm like, that's more than I need, and I don't think I can handle it, and that's a lot of money. And that, I had all the normal kind of responses that I think most people have. But in going down and touring the Hendrick shop and watching what they do and how they do it, I was just like, wow, you know, to own a car like this would be a dream. And actually, I saw a car that Chase Elliott had backed in the wall the week before at 177 miles an hour. I was watching the race. I know the exact speed of where he hit. And in that particular case, all it did was crunch in the back corner. It didn't even make it to the actual roll cage. It just crunched in the sheet metal. And we went, you know, from a safety standpoint, this would be amazing. And quite honestly, for what they were wanting for the Track Attack car, it wasn't much more than what we had in our 2018 ZL1 by the time we did the motor work, the cage, the seat. It was only about a $15,000 difference. And I know only $15,000, but what's your life worth? So, you know, for us, we moved forward and we were lucky enough to purchase the very first one. And it's cool because we, you know, had Lance McGrew, you know, longtime Hendrick crew chief, you know, who was the head of our build, an amazing build team of folks that have been there for 20 and 30 years. They helped us customize the car, get everything set up, took us out to the track, you know, gave us checklists, made sure we had everything we needed to do what we needed to do. I just can't say enough good things about Hendrick. I mean, everything about that program and what it's meant has been amazing. I was scared to death the first day because everybody kept telling me it's totally different and you don't have ABS and you don't have computer control. There's no, you know, there's no nannies. And so I went onto the track scared to death. But to be honest, I mean, after, you know, the first session, I was like, okay, let's go. You know, it literally took me 20 minutes to feel comfortable in that car. And so we had done a half test day at CMP, and we had an issue that took us off track, so we didn't get to do a whole lot of time. So the next time I got to drive the car at all was at Dave's race here this summer. With Winger, I mean, I had worked and chiseled my time for a year. You know, I'd gone, I think I started like maybe 220s or something horrible, and it was all the way down. The best I'd ever run was like I think a 207.8 or like a 208. The first time I was ever in the Track Attack car here, and I'd been off track for a year, I laid down a better lap in the Track Attack car than I ever did in Winger by a second and a half. The next time I came back, I was down at a 204. The next time I came back, I was at a 201. And what I realized about the car was that it was consistent. And so it took a huge variable out. I love the Camaros. I love the Z01 1LEs, but they get heat soak really bad and they get air pressure buildup really bad. And so there's a lot of variability in the car. With the Track Attack car, I would lay down 6 to 8 laps within 1/10 to 2/10 of a second of each other. I mean, it was just the car, it was a baseline. So then the rest of it was up to the driver and how much I was terrible that day or good that day or whatever. And that for me was awesome, was having something that I knew was gonna consistently be the same every time.
So you had an accident in the Track Attack car. What was the cause of that? What happened with the car and what's the progression now?
What happened that day, there's a technical term for it. They call it running out of talent. That's what happened that day. To be honest, I made so many mistakes. We don't have enough video time for me to tell you. I broke basically every cardinal rule of road racing all at one time. I was watching the car in front of me. I wasn't watching where I was going. And so I came into the corner way too deep. I was going about 147 into the climbing S's. I normally would be going about 143 to 145. I was offline. And so when I tried to do a last second correction, it was the worst possible time because it was right as the rear suspension was unloading. And so I put just a little bit of steering right as the rear tires basically weren't making contact with the track. And so the car just hooked and I was along for the ride. So there's nothing else to say except I screwed up. And that's hard to say, but it is what it is. Here's the key though. I left the track at right at 140 miles an hour. I hit the wall, we estimate somewhere around 90 miles an hour. The way the car hit the tire wall, it knocked me into the air and so then rolled on its top. And I was able to just pop my belts, climb right out, had plenty of egress, plenty of room, and I thought I'd killed the car for sure. The guys at Hendrick saw it and their exact response was, it's not that wrecked. And you know, I've got to give a shout out to Hendrick. You know, again, I can't promise they're going to do this for everybody, but I can tell you that, you know, Lance McGrew, longtime famed Hendrick crew chief, but he's become a really good friend of ours. He said, hey man, you know, we need to get that car here so we can see what we can do. But I had work that week. So he jumped in a truck from Hendrick and he drove to my house and came and picked up my car and took it back to Hendrick so that they could get it and start disassembling it and see what was going on. And you just, I mean, again, man, that's the kind of service, that's the kind of friendship, that's the kind of thing that is just amazing. And, you know, they came back pretty much immediately and said, hey, it just needs a new body. And we were shocked. I mean, again, if you see pictures of this car, and you'll see it as part of this video, I'm sure, I mean, it was sitting upside down on a wall. I mean, the whole, the whole side was just destroyed. But over the next, really 2.5 months, while keeping up with 4 teams for the chase, while building 4 other track attack cars, they ripped the body off. They took the car down every nut, bolt, fastener, hose, and put it on their jig to make sure that absolutely nothing was bent. The only thing wrong with the main chassis was one shock tower on the front was bent, so they cut it off and replaced it, and one motor mount was bent in the rear end. Other than that, the car, all it needed was a brand new body. They put everything back together, and she's sitting in the trailer, and if it wasn't raining, we'd be out on the track right now, less than 3 months after, having it upside down on a wall. So that says a lot. The cool part about a track attack car is that you do have a lot of options, and Hendrick can do basically anything. We ended up going with the LSX 454. It's a 7.4 liter motor, puts out good power, but we went with that honestly because it's just the easiest to maintain and to keep up with. You can do a full R07 cup motor that can put out up to 850 horsepower. Ours obviously is not at that level. I think ours is about 625, but there's a lot of upkeep that's needed with the R07 motors. And I say a lot, I mean, if you can adjust a valve train, if you can do basic things, it's not that hard. We just honestly didn't want to have to do that. So we went with the LSX, we love it. We went with the Race Tech 6-speed sequential. Love the transmission. I've driven nothing but standard, H pattern cars my whole life, but again, after 10 minutes on the track, it felt completely natural, and we love it. It's a great mix between a stick shift and an automatic, because you can just row the gears as hard as you want. But again, it is as raced, by Chase Elliott, by Casey Kane, by William Byron. I mean, it has all the safety gear, all the cage, the belts, the fire suppression, everything that you want when something goes wrong. And again, I hadn't wrecked a car in 30 years. I didn't ever think I would wreck a car. I was convinced that I wouldn't, but I can tell you, I was really glad I was in that car when I did.
So Racing for ALS is a great cause. You all help raise money. What does the money that you all raise go towards? That's
a great question, because that's the whole point of all of this. One of the things about ALS is that you feel really out of control because, the disease, there's no treatment. As of right now, there's no cure. Everybody's progression is different, and so racing for ALS was about controlling what we could control and doing what we can do. When my brother was diagnosed, they told us, we know today about ALS what we knew about cancer 100 years ago, and that's just really we've got to do better than that. So we partnered with an organization called ALS TDI. They're a 501c3 out of Massachusetts. And all they do is research 24/7 on ALS drugs and pharmaceutical remedies for ALS. So a big part of what we've raised, I think about 110,000 of what we've raised has gone to ALS TDI. This year we felt led, part of it was watching my brother and his family struggle, a little bit with, having to go into the wheelchair mode and vans and, lifts and, everything costs thousands of dollars. And saying, hey, we want to try to do something to make ALS patients' life easier, especially with COVID and everything else going on. So we started our Drive for 25 program this year, and again, that's about giving $1,000 to 25 ALS patients, and I think we're about $16,000 or $17,000 raised in the last month and a half. So I'm hoping we'll hit that target by the end of the year. But our goal is to help. That's all we want to do. We want to try to help find a cure, and we want to help those that are dealing with ALS. So that's why, again, we appreciate everybody that's gone and purchased shirts or hats. 100% of what you donate there, and the hats and the shirts are a complimentary giveaway, for donations, or those who have just given straight donations or taken part in our events. You're helping change lives. You're helping impact the reality for ALS patients, and that's a really cool thing. So thanks for that.
And all the donations to Racing for ALS go to ALS research, not the team operations, correct?
Yes, and I appreciate you clarifying that. We have a silent donor, kind of a silent benefactor, who pays for everything operational. The car parts, gas, anything that's an operational expense is paid for by a third party. So if you go on and donate, 100% of what you donate will go to either ALS TDI or else to an ALS patient who needs help.
So how can people support Racing for ALS? How can they make a donation? And if they want to join the team, how can they do that?
You can always find us online. We're on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, at Racing for ALS. That's Racing, FOR, ALS. So if you're wanting to support what we're doing, we'd love to have you do that. We would sure appreciate it. You can go to racingforals.com, exactly as it's written on my shirt. There we have a place where you can donate, just straight donations. They're tax deductible. We are a 501c3. Or if you wanted to, there's a place where you can go on and make donations for merchandise, so that you get a complimentary merch giveaway if you make a donation. But as well, if you want to take part in one of our hpde's, that's where we make the most money, and we would absolutely love to have you come join us.
Well, thanks, Scott. Thank you for sharing the story of Racing for ALS with Track Shaker today. We really appreciate it. And we give the stars of this series a custom Track Shaker Legends hat.
Oh, wow.
And we've got one for you and David.
That's awesome,
and
man.
Of course, they've got your names on them.
Dude, that's awesome.
And that's only given to the people featured on the show.
Wow.
So really appreciate your time, and even more so, I appreciate what you're doing in the world of hpde and of course for ALS.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.